The first thing to disappear is the window. At 4 in the afternoon, you can still see its shape above the kitchen sink. The glass is wet, the frame is old, and the daylight beyond it has turned the color of weak tea. By 5, the glass has become a black rectangle. When you wipe it with a cloth, soot stains the cloth and the darkness remains. Then the room begins to disappear. The table loses its far edge. The lamp gathers a yellow halo that seems to stop the light rather than spread it. Smoke-laden fog presses through cracks in the sash, under the door, and down the chimney whenever the coal fire draws badly. Your grandfather sits nearest the grate because December is cold. He has lived with bronchitis for years. Tonight, each breath ends in a small effort that was not there this morning. You cannot simply put out the fire. The fire is heat. It warms the kettle. It dries damp clothes. It keeps an old man from shivering. Across London, more fires are being fed for exactly the same reason. Their smoke rises above roof after roof and finds nowhere to go. The household in this story did not leave a name in any official report. You are a fictional composite, a young hospital porter living in inner London with your mother, your grandfather, and a school-age niece. Your street, your work shift, your conversations, and your grandfather's survival are reconstruction. They give human scale to an event documented through weather observations, pollution samples, hospital requests, and thousands of death registrations. The dates are real. From Friday the 5th through Tuesday the 9th of December, 1952, most of metropolitan London remains beneath a fog mixed with coal smoke and gases. Londoners are used to dirty winter fog. They call the thickest kind a pea souper and continue with the day if they can. But this one is not ordinary. You press a folded cloth against the leaking window frame. Your mother adds another piece of coal to the grate. Your grandfather tells her not to fuss. Outside, the street lamp vanishes. Inside, the family listens to him breathe. London did not begin burning coal in December 1952. For centuries, the city had sent smoke into its own sky. Industrial growth turned that smoke from nuisance into atmosphere. By the middle of the 20th century, an open coal grate remained the ordinary center of many homes. Factories burned fuel. Furnaces heated buildings and drove production. Power stations stood beside the Thames. Steam locomotives and newer diesel buses added their exhaust to air already marked by more than 1 million domestic chimneys. Smoke meant dirt. It blackened brick and stone. It settled on curtains and collars. It entered the lungs of children walking to school and workers waiting for buses. London had measured smoke pollution since the 19th century, debated it, regulated pieces of it, and learned to live around it. That familiarity was dangerous. A natural fog warns you by taking away distance. Coal smoke can be treated as the price of warmth and work because its sources are everywhere and belong to ordinary life. One chimney looks harmless. So does the next. The city is built from the sum. The morning of Friday the 5th is cold and damp. People light fires. Trains move. Shops open. Children leave for school. You go to the hospital expecting a winter shift, not a disaster. The first fog does not contradict that expectation. London fogs have stopped traffic before. They have delayed trains, dirtied clothes, and reduced a familiar journey to a line of curbstones. Newspapers can describe them as inconvenience or spectacle. A traveler who finds the right doorway later turns the experience into a story. But pollution is not made safe by repetition. The coal available to many households is smoky. Higher quality fuel has economic value elsewhere, including export from a country still rebuilding after war. The cheaper fire keeps one room warm and sends incompletely burned particles into the street. Industry and power generation add their own emissions. An easterly airflow has also brought polluted air from beyond London. None of these sources acts alone. The disaster requires a city burning fuel, a population needing heat, and weather that turns the lower atmosphere into a closed room. By Friday evening, you can no longer see across your own street. The horizon has not moved farther away. London has filled the space between. The trap begins with cold ground. Under an anticyclone, the air near London becomes still. The ground cools. Moist air touching it cools to the point where water condenses into fog. In ordinary weather, warmer air near the surface can rise, mix, and carry smoke upward. This time, the order is reversed. Cold air lies close to the ground beneath a layer of warmer air. Meteorologists call this a temperature inversion. The warmer layer acts like a lid. Light winds cannot break it. Moisture gathers around smoke particles, and fresh emissions remain in the same shallow volume of air that people use for breathing. Every hour makes the next hour worse. The colder the room feels, the more coal a household burns. The more coal it burns, the more smoke enters the trapped layer. The city does not need one monstrous chimney. It has countless ordinary ones operating beneath the same lid. Later measurements show how quickly the mixture thickens. Daily smoke at one monitoring point rises from about 490 micrograms per cubic meter on the 4th of December to 4,460 on the 7th and 8th. Daily average sulfur dioxide reaches roughly 3 to 4,000 micrograms per cubic meter on 3 consecutive days. Those numbers are not visible to your household. You have a cloth that turns black. You have eyes that sting. You have a throat that feels scraped after a short walk. The smell and taste are part smoke, part damp, part the sour chemistry forming inside the droplets. Scientists in 1952 do not yet agree on one substance that explains every death. Contemporary investigators measure smoke, carbon, and sulfur dioxide and study what the fog may have become inside human lungs. Later chemistry will describe a complex polluted aerosol rather than a single poison. For the family, the mechanism is simpler. Your grandfather's damaged lungs have less room for another burden. On Saturday morning, the fog is still there. You open the front door and hold out your hand. The fingers fade before your arm is straight. You know the hospital is less than 2 miles away. Distance on a map has stopped meaning very much. You step into the street and close the door behind you. Above the roofs, the warm air holds. Below it, London breathes what London has burned. You navigate by things close enough to touch. The garden rail ends at a gate. The gate opens to 3 paving stones. The paving stones reach a wall. You know the route, but memory was built from corners, shop fronts, church towers, bus stops, and the far side of a road. The fog removes all of them until the city is no longer a view. It is a sequence of surfaces. This walk is reconstruction. Across the real city, visibility varies from place to place and hour to hour. In the worst pockets, people report that they cannot see their own feet. Soot marks faces and clothes. Cars are abandoned. Much surface transport is canceled or slowed. The underground continues to offer movement below the fog, but reaching a station can itself become the dangerous part of the journey. You keep one shoe against the curb. A bus appears only when you are almost beside it, a dark mass with weak lamps. It is not moving. Somewhere ahead, a conductor calls out, but the voice has no visible body. A cyclist walks rather than rides. 2 strangers join hands to cross a road that has become wider than they remember. Every light lies about distance. A lamp that appears across the street may be only a few steps away. Another seems close until you walk toward it and feel nothing but cold air. Sound is also changed. Engines, footsteps, and coughing arrive without direction. You wait for silence, then cross. The fog follows you indoors. It enters shops, stations, offices, theaters, and homes. Closing a door removes the street, but not the air. A cinema screen can become difficult to see from the seats. Hospital corridors acquire the same yellow-brown cast as the windows. By the time you reach work, your coat carries black moisture. The handkerchief over your mouth is dark at the center. It may catch some soot, but it is not a modern respirator, and it does not make the air safe. At the receiving entrance, an orderly asks whether you are a patient. You shake your head and report for duty. Then another car edges out of the fog. Its passenger is breathing with the same painful effort you heard at home. The city outside has disappeared. What it is doing to people is beginning to arrive. There is no moment when someone declares a mass casualty event. The hospital receives individuals. An older woman whose chest tightened during the night. A man with heart disease who cannot cross a room without stopping. A child with an infection made more dangerous by the air. A worker who walked farther than usual because the bus never came. Each case has a name, a bed, a form, and a family asking what will happen next. The cases accumulate. This hospital and these patients are composite. The pressure is documented. During the fog period, the emergency bed service receives 501 applications connected with respiratory disease, most concerning people aged 45 and older. Doctors, nurses, porters, ambulance crews, and families work inside the same polluted air as the people they are trying to help. You move oxygen equipment appropriate to 1952 from one place to another. You carry messages when telephone lines cannot answer every need. You find blankets. You wipe black residue from a trolley and watch it return. No one knows the final number. Death registration happens after a death. Weekly totals appear after the week. A doctor treating bronchitis or heart failure cannot look at one patient and calculate how much belongs to cold, infection, chronic disease, smoke, sulfur pollution, or the effort of reaching care. The pattern becomes visible before the explanation is complete. More people are dying from respiratory and circulatory disease. The increase is especially severe among older Londoners and the very young. Requests for hospital beds rise. Coroners and pathologists see more cases than the season should bring. At midday, you telephone home. Your mother says your grandfather is resting. Her pause before the word resting tells you more than the word. You ask her to find the local doctor if his breathing worsens. She asks how. The street is almost impossible to cross. The telephone is unreliable, and every person who might help must first reach the door. The hospital needs you. Your family needs you. The disaster has turned distance into triage. Who can walk? Who has a telephone? Who lives near a clinic? Who has a neighbor strong enough to help? Who begins the fog with healthy lungs, and who begins with almost no reserve? You finish the shift early only because the next porter has somehow arrived. Then you step back into the air that brought the patients in. At home, the coal fire is lower. Your mother has tried to save fuel and smoke at the same time. The room is colder. Your grandfather sits upright because lying down makes his breathing harder. A cup of tea beside him has gone untouched. The family faces a choice with no clean side. Add coal, and the room grows warmer while another chimney feeds the trapped air. Let the fire die, and cold places more strain on the old man. One household cannot clear London by freezing itself. More than 1 million separate decisions have been joined by weather into one public emergency. You add a small piece of coal. Your niece pushes damp cloth into a gap below the window. Your mother hangs another near the door. These actions belong to the reconstruction. They may reduce a draught or catch visible dirt. They are not reliable protection from the gases and fine particles in the air. The wireless carries weather and travel reports, but no voice can say when your room will become safe. Fog is a familiar word. Emergency is a harder one. London has no modern air quality alert telling each household what it is breathing. Your grandfather asks how the hospital was. You tell him it was busy. You do not tell him about the row of patients waiting near the receiving door. You do not tell him how many had the same cough. Families often recognize a disaster before authorities can count it, but recognition does not create transport, beds, or clean air. During the night, his breathing changes again. The pauses become shorter. Each breath begins before the previous effort seems finished. You send a neighbor toward the doctor's address because waiting for a telephone answer has become its own risk. Outside, Sunday has no sunrise you can see. Inside, the lamp remains on through the morning. Soot settles in the enamel basin. Coal burns in the grate. Your mother counts the seconds between breaths without a watch. The neighbor returns with instructions and the promise that help will come if it can. The precise exchange is invented. Across London, real households make versions of the same calculation with fewer options than they need. The fog has entered the room. Now time begins to narrow with it. The third and fourth days are not one continuous scene. They are repeated tasks. Boil water. Check the fire. Wipe soot from the table. Listen at the window for a vehicle. Walk to the corner. Return because the corner cannot be found. Ask a neighbor. Wait. Begin again. Outside, the polluted fog remains dense. Inside, your grandfather weakens. This story allows help to arrive on Monday. A local doctor reaches the house and says the old man must be taken for care. That timing, advice, and rescue belong to the Composite. The documented record tells us only that respiratory demand rose sharply and that urgent hospital requests were met at system level. It cannot tell us how many frightened journeys almost failed between one front door and one bed. You and two neighbors carry your grandfather in a chair to a small vehicle waiting at the end of the street. The distance is short. It feels without limit. One person walks ahead beside the curb. Another keeps a hand on the chair. Your mother stays close enough to hear him breathe. No one moves quickly because speed and near-zero visibility creates another emergency. At the hospital, the entrance appears as a pale square only when you are almost inside it. Your grandfather is given a bed. The family has done what survival stories usually make heroic: found help, carried weight, refused to stop. But effort is not the same as control. Another family can work just as hard and lose someone because illness began earlier, transport arrived later, or a damaged heart or lung had no reserve left. That is why this event cannot be understood through one survivor. Pollution changes risk across a population. It does not distribute harm as a reward for courage or punishment for a mistake. The young porter, the old man, the infant, the bus conductor, and the person who never leaves home all breathe different doses through different bodies. Monday night passes under the same lid of warm air. London is still burning coal. The hospitals are still receiving patients. Deaths are still being registered one at a time. Then, on Tuesday, the air begins to move. The change is almost too small to trust. A curtain stirs near the window. Smoke at a chimney top bends instead of flattening into the roofline. A shape appears across the street, disappears, and returns with edges. The inversion is breaking. Wind and changing weather begin to disperse what 4 days of still air have held over London. Roofs emerge. Lamps regain distance. A person at the end of the street has a face again. The city returns in dirty layers. Soot remains on walls, bedding, clothes, and skin. Hospital wards do not empty when the skyline clears. Lungs and hearts do not reset with the weather. Deaths linked to the episode continue after the visible fog has gone. Your grandfather survives in this reconstruction. You find him propped up in a hospital bed, exhausted but breathing more evenly. He complains that someone has moved his slippers. The complaint is ordinary enough to make your mother cry. Thousands of real families receive no such ending. On the 19th of December, the Ministry of Health issues a statement based on the first available figures. During the week ending the 13th, Greater London registered 4,703 deaths from all causes. The two preceding weekly totals had been 1,902, then 2,062. The same week in 1951 had recorded 1,852. Those numbers are not all individually certified as deaths from smog. They reveal an enormous excess that ordinary seasonal variation cannot explain. Pneumonia and influenza registrations rise. respiratory and cardiac deaths rise. Pathologists report far more cases than expected. The first public estimate settles near 4,000 deaths associated with the acute event. Later, researchers examine the mortality that remains elevated through the winter. They test whether influenza could explain it and find that pollution fits the timing and causes better. Their retrospective estimate approaches 12,000 excess deaths through February 1953. The exact boundary cannot be drawn around every person. The scale no longer depends on seeing every individual through the fog. The registrations have made the disaster visible. The Great Smog did not teach Britain that smoke existed. It taught the country what familiar smoke could do when weather concentrated it and when thousands of separate harms were counted together. Officials begin cautiously. The first ministry statement says investigations are still underway and avoids naming one specially poisonous constituent. That caution is scientifically defensible. It also sits beside a death curve that demands action. Parliament debates fog and public health. The government appoints the Committee on Air Pollution, chaired by Hugh Beaver. Its work joins older smoke abatement campaigns, medical evidence, engineering, fuel policy, local government, and public anger. The result is not immediate. The Clean Air Act receives royal assent on the 5th of July, 1956, more than 3.5 years after the fog. It prohibits dark smoke in defined circumstances, requires cleaner operation of furnaces, addresses grit and dust, and allows local authorities to create smoke control areas. It also supports the adaptation of domestic fireplaces because reform cannot succeed by ordering households to abandon the only heating system they can afford. Implementation takes years. Coal does not vanish from London in one summer. Later, severe fogs still kill people. Smoke control areas expand gradually. Homes change fuels and appliances. Industry changes equipment and location. Monitoring improves. London becomes visibly cleaner through law, engineering, economics, and countless altered fires. The household in this story is an instrument of scale. The blackened window, the hospital shift, the chair carried through Monday fog, and the grandfather's recovery are reconstruction. They stand beside documented weather, pollution measurements, bed requests, registration totals, inquiry, and statute. The title says you survived London's Great Smog. Survival did not mean finding one secret pocket of clean air. There was no correct door to close and no single fire to extinguish. It meant reaching Tuesday with lungs and hearts still able to work. It meant proximity to help, people willing to carry you, and the chance that your body could endure what the city had made. On Friday, the disaster looked like weather. By Tuesday, the rooftops had returned. Only afterward did London begin to see what had happened in the space between them. One room, one street, one hospital bed, one registration line, then another, then thousands. The fog concealed the people. Counting them changed the air.